Wait now. I still laugh at my own little hey nows, but I've got my new friend, Ben Rankins, and I welcome you to the channel.
G'day, thanks for having me.
I'm going to start without any sort of patter, I'm going to ask, first of all, for you to tell me a little bit about your channel, where you're based.
I'm based in Melbourne, Australia, the best city in all of Australia if you like rock and roll. And my channel has the very imaginative title of Ben Rankins. And I feature Australian music on there, some dead set classics in my opinion, stuff under the radar, new and old, like a lot of new music, and also like to give the neighbours over in New Zealand a bit of love as well. So I often feature, lots of the great bands on the Flying Nun label, which is, I just will collect anything on that. I love everything out of there. Dunedin, who would have thought that such a tiny place could give us so much awesome, weird music?
Awesome, thank you. um, how long ago did you start your channel?
3 years ago. And I have another imaginative video to celebrate that every year I do a thread. And so the first one was called the 1 minute, one word title, one word name band video. And you can see each year where that's going to go.
Well, I look forward to your 20th year.
It's going to be tough, but
Well, you like people to work for it a little bit, so I appreciate that about you. So, um, what's your experience been like with your channel, and in particular, what maybe has surprised you about your experience of having a VC channel?
um, I sort of went in not really knowing a lot about it. I stumbled across the VC. I was unaware of it, to be honest. And yeah, and I just thought, I don't see too many people talking about Australian music, and even the Australian channels didn't really concentrate too much on Australian music. They'd have their fair share, but sort of they weren't as focused on it. And I kind of thought, well, that might be a niche in there. And I was kind of surprised at not only how much people embraced a whole lot of music they probably would have never heard of before and would check stuff out. And I'm at the point now where I have people on other videos saying, I bought this record because of Ben Rankin, sort of thing. Um, and which is really nice, and because I love to promote Australian music, because I think we have one of the great music scenes over here. Um, yeah, and so like I've had a really positive experience, and it's also led to things I didn't expect to do, because I do travel every year, and a bonus on top of that is, yeah, when I went to Canada last year, I got to meet a few VC members, and that was really nice to do that, and yeah, meet all the other weirdos out there like me.
I've just started this question set, and I think everybody so far has consistently said the same thing: the surprise of actually meeting people around the world that wasn't initially part of what one expected from this.
Yeah, well, I didn't expect it. Like, because in some ways, I do feel the distance because of the time difference, and so I never really see streams live or anything like that, and so I very rarely watch them. And and in some ways, it's a bonus because I very rarely know about some of the bloody dramas that go on in there.
Yeah. Um, and last sort of personal question before we get into our template 10 questions. What are some of the other things that you're interested in? What are some of your other interests?
Well, I've played music for 34 years. I've been a drummer in many bands, and recorded with all of those bands, play all original music, uh, played shows, Melbourne, Sydney, Adelaide, sort of thing, where all of them have been successful enough to keep me in my day job. But it's just something that I really, really enjoy doing. It's just a good fun. Other things I like, I live near Albert Park Lake, so I run most evenings, which is a bit over 5Ks. I like doing that. I like sport. I like Australian rules football. I love the cricket. Um, I don't have too many VC people I can talk to about those two sports because there's not much that goes on in a lot of those countries. What else? I love uh, movies, and I read a lot. I usually have 2 or 3 books on the go. Usually like a rock book, a fiction book, and some non-fiction thing as well. And I spoke to you before this. I love my food, and I love cooking and going to markets and stuff like that as well. So yeah,
Awesome.
probably other stuff, but that'll do.
Great. Okay, here are the 10 questions. So, number one, what record are you really enjoying these days? It could be a new or an old record, but it's kind of a front of the pile record for you right now.
I'm actually, because I'm quite fired up about the new Civic record coming out. I've pulled out the previous one, uh, and their EPs and things like that, and I've been really getting into them. Like, if you like sort of that classic punk rock in the vein of Radio Birdman kind of sound, but it's still they're still doing their own thing with it. Actually, their previous record was produced by Rob Younger from Radio Birdman, and they did a cool cover of War of the Hands of Time, the Master's Apprentices song as well. So yeah, so I'm kind of like getting myself fired up for that new record. Um, I really, and on the mellower end of things, I've been liking Ned Collett's record from last year. He's a Melbourne guy who's based in Berlin these days. A lot more sparse, kind of more singer songwriter, I suppose, but some unusual instruments and things in there. So yeah, there are a couple I like at the moment.
Great. Um, Tell me about a favorite concert experience of yours in your life.
Oh, the one that comes straight to mind is seeing the Beast of Bourbon, and it must have been around 95, 96, something like that. And the reason it stood out was because 2 things. Roland S. Howard opened the show, who's absolute legend, played guitar for the birthday party, released a couple of fantastic solo records, was in Crime in the City Solution, collaborated with Nicky Sudden, blah, blah. So it was mind blowing to me when I was in my 20s in the 90s that you could just go see these legends around town. And then he ended with Shivers, the Boys Next Door song, which he wrote. And unannounced, Tex Perkins, the lead singer of Beast of Bourbon, came out and decided he'd play some very sloppy drums to it. And that was when the writing was on the wall of like, okay, this will be interesting because Tex was a bit under the weather, shall we say. And then the Beast of Bourbon come on, and they came on rocking, and Tex was like in a mood, and the crowd were basically holding the fullbacks up from stop him from kicking them off the stage. He was arguing with the sound guy on stage. He was breaking microphones every 5 minutes, it seemed like, and he'd be telling the band off. And then he went back and decided that's it, and started grabbing bits of drum kit and throwing it into the audience. And then the bouncers come up, and he tried to fight them as well. And I missed the most important bit. At the about 3 songs in, someone threw a plastic glass at him, an empty glass, and he came out with, "Is that the best you can do?" And then within a second of him saying that, a full stubby, like a glass, I don't know what you call them over
I
there,
know those stubbies.
of beer just went bang into his head, and he was so for the however many 4 or 5 songs they played after that, he had blood streaming down his face. He was fighting everyone, fighting bouncers, fighting his band, and then they eventually closes the curtain, and it was kind of like, whoa, that was something kind of thing. It was like, I don't know. I think about that, and I think nowadays people are like, "Well, I want my money back." And I'm kind of like, "That was an experience, man. That's like, you know, you don't go to shows that chaotic and not know what's going to happen these days. Even small shows are usually a bit more calculated and things like that. So it was, I reckon, it was one of the last real wild rock and roll shows. A few
That
Jesus Lizard concerts I saw in the '90s were pretty wild shows as well. David Yao, I remember him in the audience, and they lost him, and then you just hear this big thump going through the PA in between the song, and then they finally got a spotlight on him. He had this guy with a mohawk in a headlock, and it was the microphone just going boom, boom. Anyway, that's what I like to do for entertainment.
you must be a Brian Jonestown Massacre fan as well.
Oh yeah, I do like them, but geez, I wouldn't want to play in a band with him.
No, no. Um, a favorite. Now, when I say favorite, I don't mean necessarily one a favorite, the favorite, because that can put us into it becomes difficult, right? And
Mm-hmm.
takes a lot of time and choices. But a favorite Bowie record.
Station to Station
Mm,
is, I would probably say that's my favorite Bowie record, and it saddens me that that's the one he doesn't remember recording.
because of the cocaine. Yeah, that's a great
Like,
record.
just yeah, from the opening track through to, like, I always loved. I had an uncle who's was sort of younger, and he used to give me a lot of cassettes, which he'd make up mixtapes for me of stuff he had, and Stay was on one of them, and it really stuck with me, and I just have always loved that track. And then once I discovered that record, it blew my mind. It's always been my favorite.
That's a great record.
Mm.
Borrow something from John, the digital gramophone, in terms of sad bastard stuff. But what's one of the saddest songs ever?
Pretty much anything by Nick Cave since his sons had died. There's been some pretty emotionally tense stuff in there. And I think it's probably Ghosteen is the album which it was probably the most literally about that period, because I think it was Skeleton Tree. Most of it was already written before that happened, but it did, I think, contribute to the performances on that record as well. But
Mm,
it's hard to pick one song out of that, but it's beautiful, as like my wife likes to say, beautiful sad.
mm.
Mm,
Yeah, I think beautiful and sad are adjacent to each other.
mm.
So flip it and say, what's one of the most joyful songs ever for you?
Uh, I don't really get off on the yay me sort of stuff. So I'm gonna go. Well, it makes me feel good because I always laugh when I hear the bass of Bourbon song, "The Hate Inside," because he's what's the great lyric? I hate I hate my wife, I hate my kids, and I hate my dog. Is the
And the
I
sad
find that
part,
gives me joy.
the sad part is that he actually would hate his dog.
Yeah, that's the worst part.
Yeah. Um, a first record of the day. What might be a record that you'd want to put on first thing in the morning?
I don't really have. I'm not one who different times of the day, different seasons. I have a mood kind of thing. I pretty much either just I've woken up with something on my mind, or there's things which I've recently got which I have still listening to and want to listen to a bit more. Yeah, I'm not very methodical or think that I got to have a morning record or anything like that. So I could put on Jesus Lizard at 9 o'clock in the morning and enjoy it just as much as, I don't know, Perfume Genius, which is really nice spare
You can hit the
electronic.
ground running.
Yeah, so I don't. That one's a tough one for me because I don't really do that.
No, I mean, that's cool as well. I think, I would have had no problem probably when I was younger to be playing like just like hit the ground running and come in with something hard. And now maybe partly because I have period of time with my wife and a cup of coffee or whatever, it would be a little bit disorienting for her. But maybe I use that as an excuse and I kind of ease into my day and I might start with Eric Satie or David Sylvian or something just kind of a little bit more esoteric before building to something a little harder.
Yeah, I got to say I'm very lucky. I'm given a lot of latitude with the things that I play, and yeah, my wife just jumps in head first. She's not having a background of really knowing a lot about music before we met, and I've taken her to everything, to Courtney Barnett, to the OCs shows, and she enjoys them all.
Oh man, I have a friend in Brisbane, and he turned me on to the OCs, and for
Mm.
my money, they're one of the most fun bands to see live right now.
Yeah, I see them every time they come out. They're
Yeah,
fantastic. Yeah.
yeah, they were that two drummer and just the assault. It's great. Um, one of the most underrated bands in your estimation, or artists.
Every Australian band ever.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
I will say the Saints. I know I bang on about the Saints a lot on my channel, but whenever you see anything about punk rock, they're never in the conversation. They always talk about New York, they always talk about London, but they never talk about the Saints or even Radio Birdman. So I'm going to say them. Even though they're widely known, I just don't know why they're not in the conversation. Um, Especially the Saints, to me, they're like possibly my favourite Australian band, especially that first three records when it was Chris Bailey, Ed Cooper, and Ivor Hay and Kim Bradshaw in there. And they're just phenomenal records and they sound like nothing else to me. And they evolved in such a short amount of time, which I also think that's probably why they didn't go down so well at the time. And they looked like slobs. They didn't have cool Vivienne Westwood outfits and stuff like that on either.
Mm,
But yeah,
that's
and they
awesome.
were the first. Their single come out before the Damned, and everyone says the Damned one. It was three
Is that
months.
right?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah. Fatal, their own pressing, Fatal Records come out 3 months before the Damned, and they just sent 500 of them everywhere. And that's the famous story of where it got in the hands of, I think it was Sounds magazine, one of the music ones in it. And the famous thing was like, "This is the best single of this week or any week."
That's awesome. That's great.
Mm.
So again, this was already pre-baked in before I knew about your preferences. Van Morrison or Jackson Brown?
Can I like just shoot myself?
Yeah, you
Not
can.
listen to either.
Okay, that's a fair answer. Joni Mitchell or Aretha Franklin?
Aretha every day of the week. Joni Mitchell's turned into a bit of a Van Morrison in her old age. She's, yeah, got some issues.
Somebody said to me, like Joni Mitchell, Aretha Franklin, they're totally different. And I go, that's the point of the question.
Yeah, Aretha's awesome.
Yeah.
I watched that. It came out. I think it was Melbourne Film Festival, and it's since been released on a Blu-ray. And that the can't remember what it's called, but it's that show which was recorded in the church.
Yes.
Their
Yes.
father. That is just stunning live singing. That is soul music to me, not those trained canaries that you see on The Voice and all of that sort of thing. Yes,
Yeah.
they can all hit the notes, but they don't have that grit that she's got. She's amazing. She can hit all the notes, but she's got the guts behind it too.
Totally. And last question of the template of 10, three must-have desert island discs for you.
Saints, I'm stranded, fittingly, um, on a desert island.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh God, this is hard off the top of my head, and because I don't have a list catalogued in my head, so these are going to be just what I can think of now. The first thing after that springs to mind is Roland S. Howard's Teenage Snuff film from 1999. Almost a perfect record to me, and because we don't want it all, dark and punky all the time. What about the Avalanches? Since I left you, great turn of the millennial 2000 sampler-delic, psychedelic, funky, dancey record. So no one's going to be on the island, so I can dance like no one's watching anyway.
That's right, because no one's watching. That's great. Thank you, Ben. So here are 5 Ben Rankins specially chosen questions I put together. So um, you may hate this first question, but the greatest Australian band of all time.
Saints.
Thanks.
I'm just going to stick with the Saints.
Yeah, you're consistent.
I think people are going to like end up turning off because they'll have a drinking game of my videos for how many times I mention the Saints.
Okay, ironically, this was mentioned by you earlier, but I've got this already here. British punk or New York punk?
That's tough because they're completely different. Because New York punk to me was more about an attitude and art, and they were more artistic in a lot of ways. And a lot of the bands that that's the thing. Like I love that era, and I love the early era of UK punk because it wasn't codified into a sound yet. Um, I don't know. I think I like the anger of the UK punk probably a little bit more. There's a bit more aggression in it, and this yes, they're like talked about the most, but it would have been amazing to be hit with the Sex Pistols with no warning at the time. Um, and the Clash, I think one of my favorite UK punk bands is the Damned. I just that first record's phenomenal. Yeah, just by a tiny, tiny bit, just because I do like a bit of that more, I suppose, aggression and anger in my punk rock than the artsy side, which I do love, and I feel bad leaving out all those amazing New York bands because that would have been a hell of a scene too.
Yeah, it is intended to be a very, very difficult question. I'm glad you struggled with it.
Hmm.
Um, your favorite Canadian artist or band?
Um, I like quite a few, but all of the indie ones have just blanked out of my mind at the moment. So oh, it's not my favorite, but they've come into my mind, and I absolutely love them. DOA,
Mm.
they're a great, great band, and still going, still touring, and they're very important too. Them and Black Flag, I believe, are like the first hardcore punk bands who really thought about playing outside of their hometowns and starting like what are still established touring circuits for small hardcore punk bands and indie bands and everything. So they're like really, really important to that underground scene too.
I'm originally from Toronto, and so I didn't really know the West Coast punk scene. I didn't really gravitate to LA punk scene,
Mm.
but I've learned subsequently that the LA or the West Coast right up to Vancouver, like No Means No, DOA, there's a whole, and it's all very incestuous. I think, the
Mm.
Dead Kennedys, and they
Mm.
often people mention, even Nico Case will mention like
Mm.
DOA as being a seminal experience for her. And I and yeah, and then there's also a gentleman named Art Bergman who was in a band called the Young Canadians, and he had a good
Yeah.
solo career. I'm going to see him tonight. He's
Oh,
just
cool.
re-released "What Fresh Hell Is This," and
Mm.
it's kind of weird to see an old punk who I think has gone through a lot in his life at this stage. I'm guessing he's going to be like late 60s or something, but
Mm.
it'll be great to just honor his existence.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. The other cool
Good.
thing is DOA also appear in the Hardcore Logo mockumentary, which
Yes.
is one of my favorite rock and roll movies.
I love it as well. A little self-aggrandizing. So I used to go out with Bruce McDonald's sister Valerie. We were at university together.
Ah,
So I remember Bruce coming over to some of our parties, and we would be pogoing to the Ramones, and the record player would be skipping in the second floor. It's a great movie.
ah, yeah. And in the end, it's love.
Yeah, very fun. Did you hear the story about when he won a film award, maybe the best Canadian film or something like that, and he
Mm.
was awarded some money the year that it came out, and he said, "I'm going to use this money to buy a big chunk of black hash."
I didn't hear that. That's a
That
great
was
answer.
good. Yeah. Um, okay, one last one. So, what album? And you can repeat if you want what your earlier answer, but what album best defines punk music for you?
I'm stranded.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
easily. Yeah, for me, they just have the edge over Radio Birdman. Um, yeah, there's something about that record, like one of the best singles of all time, I'm Stranded, and also one of the best 1-2 punches at the end of the record when it goes into Nights in Venice. And it's probably like the first 8 or 10 minute punk song, and it's just relentless and never lets go. There's no widdly diddly prog rock changes, and it's just in the red the entire way. It's so good. Yeah, and the other thing I like about it is they have a nod to Australian 60s garage rock. They cover the Missing Link song on there, and with a sense of humour, they do a punked up version of Kissing Cousins for the Elvis song. So it's got, yeah, I like how it's got a bit of that in there as well. That shows a few sides. It's not just all one thing. And just, yeah, Ed Cooper's guitar sound on that is just mind-blowingly good. It's just that perfect meeting of noise and that edge, but like it's a really original slashing stuff. And there's riffs in there, definite riffs and hooks that you can latch onto. And Chris Bailey was great at finding those lyrical hooks within that and those memorable choruses in all those amazing songs.
Well, Ben Rankins, thank you so much. I mean, first of all, it's been great to meet you virtually. I look forward to meeting you in person. Either I'll come over there or you come back here, or we'll meet somewhere in between.
Just like a 20-hour plane trip, I think. That's all.
Yeah,
Easy.
exactly. I love it at this stage of my life. I love 20-hour plane rides. Um, but also thank you for your channel. I've been really enjoying it and getting that
Thank
view
you.
in on Australian music in particular, and some of it that I know, but most importantly, a lot of it I don't. So you're educating all of us. So keep it up. It's awesome.
Thank you very much. Well, I just do the best I can with and it's purely just my taste. There's a whole heap of people who are like, what about this and what about that? And there's things I don't know about as well. But yeah, I try and cover a fair range of stuff. Like obviously, punk rock and things like that is my thing, but I go like from that end of the spectrum to really sparse, quiet, country tinge. I like the electronic stuff. Yeah, it's all over the shop in my collection. So
Yeah,
yeah,
which is probably one of the reasons I like your channel as
mm.
well. I like eclectic. So thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Carpe diem, my friend.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
You too. Bye.